UV MAster. So polygroups once again gives us a lot of other functions if you combine it with some of the other features in ZBrush. And one of the ones that I love, and most people love too if they've ever UV'd, is the UV MAster in ZBrush. So let's take a look at that. So here we see some UVs, and I'm going to unmorph this so that we go back to the geometry. Really cool display that ZBrush has for viewing UVs. And what I'll do is I'm going to delete the UVs, so this way we start from scratch. So delete UVs. So here on the right side I have my tool menu always. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse that, and I'm going to get rid of the plugins menu, which I docked so I can do it with you guys. So here I'm going to Z plugin, open that up. I'm going to grab this icon and drag it over to the right. And if I open towards the bottom something called UV MAster, we can look at the features of UV MAster. And once again, this is just a brief description of this. There's a lot of more features that I'm not going to go into, but I just want to get you guys going. So here we have polygroups, and they're grouped for different purposes. They're grouped so I can isolate areas and model, and they're also grouped because I'm considering that as I unwrap this for my UVs, I'd like these groups to be islands for UVs. So how this works is very simple. We open up the UV MAster plugin, and there's an option to unwrap immediately. So you can just unwrap and it'll basically create UVs, and ZBrush will figure out where everything needs to be in order to keep them from overlapping and keep them within the UV space. But if you have polygroups, you can turn on this polygroups feature, which is really nice, and then hit unwrap. And so that, if you notice, that was very quick. Oh, one thing to note is that you must be on the lowest subdivision level of the geometry to do this. So let's say I was in a higher level and I tried this, you just get a message saying that you've got to go to the lowest to unwrap. So here I am in the lowest, and it worked. And how do we know it worked? Well, we can go back to the tool menu and we can find UV map. And in the UV map, which this menu, there's a lot of options here, but if you look around and take your time, you'll find something called UV map. It's in the tool menu. Then you have the option here to delete the UVs or morph UV. And if I click on morph UV, it basically gives me the 2D layout or the UV space. This is really nice because it looked at my polygroups. These are the lips here. This is the back of the head. This is the front of the face. My eyes and ears. So this is a really cool function because we can quickly look at them, but we can't really do much here, like as far as editing or anything like that. But because they're separate islands, we can go to polygroups and we can auto group it, and it does some weird things like that. Or we can do group visible, and because now we have UVs, we can go back to UV map and unmorph it, and if we go to polygroups, we can do auto groups with UVs, and we can get them all back. And actually we get an extra one because it split the lips, which is really nice. You have a top and lower lip. Now the top and lower lip is a great thing to have for sculpting, because a lot of times we need to do things like let me divide this once. We need to do things like select the upper lip and mask it by holding down Control and tap, and maybe want to pull this lip down, so I can go to my move brush and I can just kind of like make an overhang there and some very believable geometry there. Alright, so that's more sculpting. I'll get into things like that later with masking, but we got the UVs back, the polygroups back, by using the UV auto groups with UV. So if we wanted to edit the UVs, we can do that. We can go to the lower level, or in this case, let me go back down here. And let's go back to the Z plugin and UV Master. So in the UV Master, we can look at a flattened version of it. But if we try to right now, it says flatten is only allowed on a mesh without subdivision levels. Use work on clone and then copy paste UV system. So it tells you everything you have to do this successfully. So if you're lost, just read it, take your time to understand it. So let's press work on clone first. So we have that, and then we'll flatten it. So now we're looking at the UV space here, and what's nice about this is that you can hold down Control and tap on an object. If you have W, which is move, so the move scale rotate, WER, would allow you to move and scale the UVs. So now that I'm in move, which is W, I'm going to hold on Control and tap and get rid of symmetry. Actually, let's clear that out. And if I tap, you guys are going to see this gizmo, so I'll stick with that. And then you can move. You notice that it's grabbing the other UV. So let's go and let's make a better selection there. It looks like they're probably touching, so I'm going to grab the ear. So Control and tap while I have W, which is move, and I can now grab this island and move it around. I can also rotate it. So if I wanted this here, or let's say I wanted these pieces bigger, and rotate that, clear it. And so now I move things around, I can go back to the Z plugins and I can unflatten. Now this is a copy, this is not the original one, so what we have to do is make a copy of these and then go back to your original head, because here you can see that this is a new subtool because it doesn't have the number of tools I had on the previous one. So if we click on the previous one, then now I can go back and then paste UVs. So it's a little strange, but you can get the hang of it pretty quickly. And how do I know this now has those UVs? All I have to do is go back to the tool menu and UV map and morph UVs. And here you can see this is where I scaled up the other UV. And just to be absolutely sure, if you hit D, you'll go up to level, so you know this is the head with the subdivision levels. So UVs are as easy as just clicking one button, but if you want a little bit of a more advanced UV layout, you can use polygroups and select the polygroup function and get a little bit more out of the UV layout. So unwrap will unwrap them, but with polygroups you'll get separate islands. So that's UV Master.